All right, hi again, guys. We are going to talk about the basics of some physical health advocacy. We've talked about advocacy before, which is just simply, using your voice to get your needs met. And many of you are already doing this very, very well. But we certainly wanted to talk about some of the basics or some strategies that might be helpful. And we're going to talk a little bit about like telehealth, telemedicine, which I don't know that it's going anywhere, honestly, because I think it's cheaper for everybody. And in some ways, sometimes it's easier to set up and to handle. So here we go. Land acknowledgement again. I hope some of you are watching all of these so that you can see the evolution over time of this particular slide for me. I do. I think it's interesting because it's such an important thing to talk about. It just feels so out of context, right? I'm like, I love it. I love that we're acknowledging it. It's just funny to me. It's like, let's talk about depression, but first. And it's tough. So today on this slide, I'm going to talk about how there were many, many different tribes that lived in this area in North and South America when white people came here and made a bunch of really negative, bad choices. But each of those tribes had their own culture, and each of those cultures were different. Even like the Iroquois Nation, which is made up of many, many, many different tribes, right? Each of those tribes underneath that banner of the Iroquois Nation was different. And so if you are a member of a tribe, or if you have heritage of a tribe, one of the things that you can do is become registered with that tribe. And it is a whole process that if that is something you are interested in, I have figured it out in a couple of cases and am happy to figure it out again. Because there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of history there, American history, like truly American, right? North and South American history that has not been lost, but just isn't talked about because we start American history with the white settlers, which I think is just such a travesty and it's part of the story, right? It's like 10 minutes and like the whole history of like what happened in the Americas, and we treat it like it doesn't exist. So there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to know there. A lot of local tribes that are still here, each of them wildly different. So, and the interesting thing is, and I learned this relatively recently, but even like the Apache tribe, which we all have some connotation, we all have some expectations of and some immediate thoughts when you think of the Apache tribe, but there are like 4 different Apache tribes that are like independent nations, like independent areas. Wow. And I would be willing, and I do not know because I have not gone and met with them or anything like that, but I would be willing to bet that each of those Apache tribes have differences in how their culture changed and grew over time. And so just, when you start thinking about mainstream culture, which is such a misnomer, like I hate that phrase, mainstream culture.
I don't even know what that means.
It's the stuff, it's basically white culture. It's what we consider white culture, which is just, it's stupid. Right? Like American, like a culture in the United States, the cultures in the United States are they're all worth seeing and they're all worth valuing and they're all worth learning about. And I don't know that anybody can really know everything about any of them. And when you get to the native tribes, like I think we tend to lump it all in as Native American culture, and it's not, right? Each of them are different. Each of them were completely different and separate entities. And now now we've had a mini lecture on Native American cultures and my thoughts. So let's move on to, what were we talking about? Physical health advocacy. Okay, today's agenda. So self-advocacy is the ability to articulate one's needs and make informed decision about the support necessary to meet those needs. We will probably be mentioning some similar strategies that we mentioned before to, what was the other advocacy one we did? Renter's tips.
Yeah.
When we were talking about advocating for yourself in that realm, in that area. So be prepared for that. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about my chart, which is largely used through ARC. Does Community Health use anything like an online charting system that
I know patients? Community Care does.
Okay. Telemedicine, COVID-19 vaccines, insurance, and advocating for your needs. Oh, it's fine. Oh, there it is. So let's watch this.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Adams. I'm a family medicine physician.
So we are going to watch a video. or a minute and a half on setting up a MyChart. There will also be, I'm always happy to send you guys the link as well so that you can watch it later on your own. But now you're in a video, which is very meta. I went backwards, guys. It's been a long day. All right, here we go.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Adams. I'm a family medicine physician with UT Family Practice and Chief Medical Informatics Officer for Erlanger Health System. Welcome to MyChart. MyChart is a website that gives you access to your electronic medical record 24/7. It updates after every visit with an Erlanger provider. It's safe, it's secure, and it allows you to interact with the staff in your provider's office. Any current Erlanger patient can sign up for MyChart and create an account. We encourage everyone to take advantage of the benefits of this service. Benefits include viewing physician reports, test results, and the ability to manage our health history. You will also be able to schedule appointments and request refills on your prescriptions. Start by logging on to mychart.erlanger.org and begin the registration process. If you already received an activation code at the bottom of your after-visit summary, use that code to register. Or you can register with MyChart by clicking Sign Up Now to the right of the page. Then follow the instructions to create an account. After you register for MyChart on your computer, you can download an app for either an Apple or Android smartphone. MyChart is not for urgent medical matters. If you have an emergency, call 911.
If you have any questions.
Okay, so that's pretty much the basics for any of these MyChart systems, whether it's through ARC or community care. I don't know if Lone Star Circle of Care has one, but I assume that it has something. Most hospital entities these days have an online system, like St. David's has one as well. And you can always Google, how do I set this up? What does this look like? How do I do this ahead of time as well? And we are happy to help with that. What he said at the end is really important. It's not for urgent matters. If you need to go, if it's an emergency, call 911 or go to an emergency room. Don't wait for a response on MyChart. Telehealth is the use of electronic information and like video chatting or like over the phone technologies to provide care when you and the doctor are not in the same place. That has become more and more common since the pandemic began. You can talk to your doctor over the phone or in a video chat. Usually you get the directions ahead of time. I have found that most of them are pretty easy, but if you're having trouble with it, like odds are they will call you. Instead of, I had one not that long ago where like the whole video system broke down and she ended up just having to call me. Like I could still hear her, she couldn't hear me. It was very weird.
Wow.
You can send and receive messages using chat messaging, email, secure messaging through like that MyChart setup, and secure file exchange. Use remote patient monitoring so doctor can check up on you at home, which if that's something that is needed, they will talk with you about. We'll go over how to do it. If you do not know something, don't hesitate to ask, right? This is all new technology for all of us. And sometimes these directions are not as user-friendly as doctors think. That's just because true. They understand it, because they're the ones that set it up and they have to use it all the time, right? Just like with housing, right? Like just because somebody in the housing world understands something that you don't, doesn't mean anything, right? That's their whole life. That's their language. That's their work language that they're working with, right? Like, so they may explain something to you in a way that makes perfect sense to them because they've done it 100 times, but to you who's never done it, isn't going to make sense. So always, always, always ask questions if you don't know or if you're unsure. COVID-19 vaccines, Pfizer, 2 shots, 21 days apart. Everybody over the age of 12.
I don't think so. Really?
I think so.
You did? Okay.
They just expanded Pfizer to between the ages of 12 and 16.
I didn't know that.
I don't think there are any recommendations regarding like getting a vaccine for any kids before school. I don't think they can require that right now. But that's Pfizer. Moderna is the 2 shots, about 28 days apart. From my experience and what I've seen, people tend to have side effects after the second shot of Moderna. They suck, but they're also not that intense. I mean, they don't last longer than about 24 hours, 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, it's not so.
it's like getting COVID light is how I felt when I had the symptoms. I felt like I was going to die, but also fully recognized that there are people out there who had really, really, really nasty strains of COVID who were hospitalized for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I would rather have a day where I feel like I'm going to die rather than, have additional and terrible symptoms. And Johnson & Johnson, which if you are a woman, have that in mind, that I think they think the blood clots that did form in those handful of cases that are related to hormonal connections, because I don't know, that's how medications and women are. I think we deal with a lot more hormonal issues than men. That's my personal opinion, not anything written anywhere. But just have that in the back of your mind. If you're concerned about it, certainly, and that's the vaccine that is offered to you, talk about it, ask questions about it. I know they went and did some additional research. They pulled it and did some additional research. So definitely ask questions if you're concerned. As always, vaccines are certainly your choice. There's no pressure here one way or another. Like if it's something you're interested in, I know through the Austin public health system, everybody can kind of walk in at this point. I think CVS just opened walk-ins as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. They have a lot. Yeah.
So, there should be plenty of availability if for whatever reason, and they're free.
Even if you don't have insurance.
Even if you don't have insurance.
The state will pay for it.
Right. And it's something that you're interested in. Like, go and do it. Like, you don't have to have insurance. You don't have to pay for it. So if that's something that you haven't done because of that reason, like, you don't have to worry about it. If you're worried about the side effects, by all means, like, that is absolutely, your choice and your decision. And I am not advocating one way or another for you on that particular realm, right? Even a moment ago when I was talking about the side effects from Moderna and like how I personally felt about it, that was my own personal thought process and my own personal reaction to it. Fully understanding that not everybody is going to feel and believe the same things that I do and felt about that. So please know that in advance. Insurance, if you need help applying for Medicaid or Medicare, and if you are turning 65, I believe you can apply for Medicare, 6 months before you turn 65? Mm-hmm. You definitely want to get that application in kind of as soon as you can. And we can always check that out if you're like 64 and you're not sure when you could qualify. You can call 211. I'm happy to help. Maria is happy to help you navigate the system. We are not Medicaid and Medicare experts in the least, but we can absolutely get you started. If you do not qualify for Medicaid, it is possible your children will still qualify for Medicaid. Yes. So keep that in mind. So even if you are working a full-time job and you're making like $25,000 a year and you may not qualify, your kids may. So have that in the back of your mind when you are trying to decide whether or not you want to apply for Medicaid. Advocating your needs to your doctor. Be prepared, right? Like, have a list of issues, write it down, right? Like, if you are dealing with a chronic issue, write down the things that are popping up in between your doctor's appointments so that when you go back in, you can have that conversation with them, right? You're not trying to remember in that moment all of the things that, have happened along the way. I'm really bad about this. Like, I will be like, oh, well, I need to talk about X, Y, and Z. And then I'll go in and I'm like, oh, no, I'm fine. Because in that moment, I feel fine. Right. And I had somebody just the other day tell me that she needs to stop telling people she's fine because it leads to them not asking other questions. And she's absolutely right. Right. And that's one of the things she and I we talked about when she shared that with me. And so one of the things that she's working on now is she'll say she's fine. And then she will go, okay, no, that's what this means, right? I'm doing okay, but I'm still struggling with this, this, and this. So have that in mind, that you need to be honest and upfront about how you're feeling. And this is another example of, having some humility. My example is I wear hearing aids and I hate going in and getting tested because every time I know my hearing is worse than it was the last time. And there's nothing worse than sitting there going, yeah, I can't hear that. Okay, can you make it louder? Like, I can't hear that either. And it requires this. I have to sit there and literally take a moment before I go into the booth and do the hearing test. If you see your doctor and you have a specific complaint, make sure that you know kind of when it started, what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and any additional symptoms, right? If anything has changed, right, I would give all that information. If you are taking new medications, so if you have a psychiatrist and a primary care and they're different people, right? Make sure that you have your list of medications, and you can go in and check like your online chart to make sure that information was updated. And if it wasn't, I would contact the nurse and I would make sure that that information gets updated. Have somebody come with you, have a friend, family member, significant other. They can offer moral support. They can vouch for you. They also may have questions that you didn't even think about. Right. Or maybe can explain something that you felt like you didn't understand, but didn't want to ask questions. And it also may make you feel more confident, right? Because you're not the only person in the room asking those questions. And hopefully that will allow you to feel more comfortable in asking what was the phrase when I was a kid? Like, there are no stupid questions. There are no stupid questions when it comes to your healthcare, right? Like, when you're being given a medication, why am I being given that? What is that for? What are the side effects for that? How long am I supposed to be taking that? Right? Like, all too often we see doctors as the expert in the room, and they are. But ultimately, we have to know what's going on so that we can stand up and we can advocate for our physical health. And it can be hard to do that when you don't actually know all the pieces that are going on. Be assertive. So you can, and many of you guys already do this, but you can absolutely wrap back around to the, okay, no, like, I understand that that's a concern, but I'm here because I have shoulder pain and I always have it. Like, what can we do about that? Right? Like, no, I'm in pain. Like, I don't want pain medication. I want like an answer for why I'm having this pain. It is easy to downplay the severity of your symptoms, which is what I was talking about a moment ago. Just being like, oh, hey, no, I'm fine. But as soon as you actually start thinking about it, like, you're not. Like, and that's okay. It's okay to not be fine. Right? It's also okay to say, I'm fine, but I have all of these symptoms. Like, I'm struggling with this, this, and this, and this. Like, I've been able to make it. Right? Like, that is okay to say. And make sure that you are saying that as black and white as possible. Right? There's this whole style of language that's all like hedging, right? So it's like, oh yeah, I guess sometimes it's okay. Right? And if it's not, it's not. And that's okay. But just be aware of that. Ask questions. It's my favorite piece of advocacy. Ask questions if you don't understand.
Yes.
Ask. Communicate your concerns, whether it's financial concerns or it's, long-term health concerns, right? Like, if you get the information that maybe you have a heart murmur, like, what does that look like? What does that mean? What do I need to do? How can I prevent that from, I don't think a heart murmur is a good example of how can I prevent that from getting worse, but you can ask. Right, with my kidney stone that I talked about in the last video, I think, right? Like, that was one of my questions. Like, what can I do to avoid this in the future? Right? Because I hated it. It sucked.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right. But ask those questions. Take notes, right? Like, honestly, if you have any kind of chronic health condition, I would just have a notebook. Like, I would just have I would go down to Walmart and spend $1 and get like a spiral notebook or a composition notebook, and like literally have dates of your doctor's appointments and who you saw, and like take notes. Like, you can write it in the doctor's office if that's helpful, or you can on your way out, right? You sit in your car when you leave and you take just a couple of notes of what was said, or you ask for copies of everything, right? Because they usually give you discharge information, not always, but if they do, right, you can have a folder where you keep all that stuff in it, so that when it comes time to, apply for Medicaid or apply for disability or to argue against the doctor for whatever reason, like, you have a written record of what happened and when things occurred.
Or you can ask if you can record the conversation.
Before you leave, ask your provider for copies of any scans or test results. You can certainly ask. I don't know how often they'll be able to do that, but you can always request your medical records. They're yours. It's your information. You can request it. I know that if you are dealing with a VA system, that may be a little bit stickier, and that is something I have never worked through or dealt with. But if it is an issue and it is something you are dealing with, I am happy to walk that walk with you and see what we can find out. As always, questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything we missed, please let us know, and we will be sure to add it in. All the ways you can get a hold of me if you have any of those questions, comments, or concerns. And if you have another strategy that you have thought of that you would like us to share with the community, feel free to comment here underneath, and hopefully it will help somebody else out. If you are experiencing any kind of civil rights violations in your medical appointments, definitely make sure that you have what proof of that you can, right? So if like you're recording conversations, right, like there would potentially be proof in there. But like that's also not okay. Like you have the right to be listened to and heard and respected every time you go to the doctor. And if you don't feel heard or respected, go and get a second opinion. And we will do what we can to address any civil rights issues that you guys may run into out there. Okay. Now, on that super dour note, I'm going to awkwardly end the presentation again so I can stop recording. But thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you. I think we have one more recording today. We'll see you here in a few moments, and I hope you guys have a good day.